At dawn on August 14th, 1987, police cut through a gate at a remote property on the shores of Lake Eildon in Victoria, Australia. They didn't know exactly what they'd find inside. What they found were children, standing in a line, identically dressed, their hair bleached the same shade of platinum blonde, cut in the same style. They ranged in age from 11 to 18 years old. They had been told their entire lives that they were brothers and sisters, that the woman who owned this property was their biological mother, that she was also the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. History has an official version, sanitized, approved, filed away. And then there's everything that didn't make it into that version. The programs that were classified before anyone could ask questions, the groups that gathered power in the shadows of ordinary life, the experiments in human consciousness that serious institutions funded, studied, and then buried. My name is Mila. This is The Periphery, dark history, hidden cults, and the edges of the human mind. Welcome to the part of the record they didn't want you to find. They classified it, and we're declassifying it, one episode at a time. Her name at birth was Evelyn Grace Victoria Edwards. She was born in 1921 in a small Victorian town called Sale, the eldest of 7 children. Her father was a World War I veteran who was frequently absent. Her mother claimed to communicate with the dead and was periodically hospitalized for mental illness. Evelyn spent part of her childhood in an orphanage. It is perhaps not surprising that a woman who began life with so little stability would spend the rest of it constructing an identity of absolute authority. What is surprising, what makes this story so extraordinary, is how many intelligent, educated, successful people helped her do it. In the early 1960s, Evelyn had reinvented herself entirely. She had changed her name to Anne Hamilton. She had become a yoga teacher in the wealthy suburbs of Melbourne. Glamorous, charismatic, drawing in bored, affluent women looking for something more than their comfortable lives offered. And then she met Dr. Rainer Johnson. Johnson was not a fringe figure. He was one of Melbourne's most respected academics, a physicist and author, a man of genuine intellectual standing. He had been experimenting with LSD as a spiritual tool and was already part of a circle of professionals interested in consciousness research. And when he met Anne, he was captivated. When he wrote in his diary that under the influence of LSD, her face became, and I'm quoting directly, Johnson declared Anne Hamilton the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. And because Johnson said it, because a respected physician and academic at the University of Melbourne said it, people believed him. This is the part of cult stories that people find hardest to understand. We want to believe that only desperate or uneducated people join cults, that intelligence is a protection against manipulation, and it isn't. Anne's inner circle included psychiatrists, physicians, lawyers, and academics, people who had spent years training their minds to think critically, and they looked at this woman, this yoga teacher from Sale, and concluded that she was divine. The cult's motto said everything about how Anne wanted to operate. Unseen, unheard, unknown. That was the instruction. Stay invisible, keep this private. The outside world does not need to know what happens here. And then Anne Hamilton married a man named Bill Byrne, took the name Hamilton-Byrne, and began the project that would define everything that followed. She decided she needed children. Anne Hamilton-Byrne's vision was specific and deliberate. She believed the world was headed toward apocalypse, and when it came, the family would survive. And the children she was gathering, her children, as she called them, would be the ones to re-educate whatever remained after humanity. She called it building a master race. 28 children were ultimately brought to the property at Lake Eildon, a remote 240-acre estate called Kailama, known within the family simply as Up Top. Some were the biological children of cult members who surrendered them willingly. Others were obtained through a sophisticated adoption fraud, forged birth certificates, falsified documents, cult members who worked in hospitals and social services, quietly steering vulnerable young mothers toward giving up their babies. That hospital detail is not incidental. It is central to understanding how the family operated, because controlling a psychiatric institution meant controlling access to patients at their most vulnerable. It meant access to drugs. It meant the ability to recruit new members from among people who had come seeking help. And it meant access to LSD. At New Haven, family psychiatrists administered LSD to patients, some of them without consent. This was not a commune of countercultural hippies experimenting with consciousness. This was a network of medical professionals using a psychiatric hospital as a recruitment and experimentation facility. Now, the children. Life at Up Top followed a strict and brutal rhythm. The children were homeschooled and kept in almost complete isolation from the outside world. They were raised on near-starvation diets. They were subjected to unprovoked beatings administered by the women known as aunties, cult members who lived at the property and acted as enforcers, while Anne herself lived largely in comfort, traveling between properties in Britain, Hawaii, and the United States. One survivor who grew up at Up Top described the hunger like this. The children were given psychiatric medications daily, sedatives, antipsychotics, tranquilizers to keep them compliant, multiple medications administered routinely to children. And then when they reached adolescence, when they turned 14, they underwent initiation. The initiation involved LSD. The child would be taken to a dark room. They would be given a dose of LSD, injected, not offered. And they would be left there, alone, in the dark, for a trip that could last several days. Anne Hamilton-Byrne, or one of her psychiatrists, would visit periodically during the experience. The purpose was explicit. Under the influence of the drug, in the dark, alone and frightened, the child was guided toward one conclusion, that Anne Hamilton-Byrne was God. I want to pause here and acknowledge something directly. What I've just described, the starvation, the beatings, the drugging of children in dark rooms, is not alleged. It is testified to by multiple survivors. It is documented in police records. It formed the basis of a criminal investigation that ran for years. And yet, Anne Hamilton-Byrne was never charged with child abuse. Not once. We'll come to why in a moment, but first, how did it end? It ended because two young women were brave enough to leave. Sarah Hamilton-Byrne, one of Anne's adopted children, who had grown up at Up Top, escaped in 1987 with the help of friends she had met at ballroom dancing classes. Friends from the outside world, people who had no idea what her life actually looked like. And Sarah went to the police. And then she did something even more extraordinary. On August 14th, 1987, when police staged their pre-dawn raid on the Kailama property, Sarah went with them. The raid removed the children from the property. 7 of them were still living at Up Top. The others had been dispersed to boarding schools in England and to cult member households across Australia and overseas. Anne Hamilton-Byrne herself was not there. She was overseas. She would remain overseas for 6 more years. And here is where the story becomes a different kind of disturbing. Because incredibly, astonishingly, not a single adult was arrested on the day of the raid. Police allowed Bill Hamilton-Byrne and the aunties to simply walk away. Detective Lex DeMann was not involved in the initial raid. He came to the family case 4 months later, investigating an arson fire started by a teenager named Adam Lancaster, a boy who had been adopted by a cult member at 2 weeks old and raised on the fringes of the family. A colleague told the man to stay away from the family, told him that if he got involved, it would be with him for a lifetime. And Lex DeMann did not stay away. In 1989, he convinced his superiors to establish Operation Forest, a dedicated task force of 6 detectives assigned specifically to investigate the family. And for 5 years, he pursued Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne across multiple continents, building a case against a network of people who refused to talk, who had destroyed evidence, and who had the protection of former members in positions of institutional power. In June 1993, with the help of the FBI, Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne were arrested at their property in the Catskill Mountains in upstate New York. DeMann later described the moment he learned they had been arrested. "I walked out of the room and I broke down for about 10 minutes. I threw chairs everywhere, because that was 4 years of memories of the police officers who'd been damaged by it, the pressure they'd been under, and the admiration I have for the survivors, the children, who came through what most of us would find an absolutely abhorrent way of growing up." Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne were extradited to Australia and brought before the court. The charges were fraud, conspiracy to commit perjury, related to the falsification of birth certificates for 3 children registered as their own biological triplets. Not child abuse, not administering of LSD to minors, not the beatings or the starvation or the years of psychological torture. Fraud. Because the children, now adults, were deemed too traumatized to testify effectively. Because the legal complexities of the extradition had limited what could be charged. Because the system, as it so often does, found a way to make the accounting smaller than the crime. Anne and Bill Hamilton-Byrne were each fined $5,000 Australian dollars. $5,000. They did not go to prison. Anne Hamilton-Byrne lived until 2019. She died at 97 years old in a nursing home, still visited regularly by devoted followers. She was diagnosed with dementia in her final years. To the end, she denied mistreating the children. She died with no headstone, no public funeral. Detective Lex DeMann, on hearing of her death, said this: "From my perspective upon hearing the news of her death, no one is sad. Those who survived, some justice has been served. Today is not a sad day. It is a day to celebrate." What stays with me about the family is not the horror of what happened up top, though that horror is real and deserves to be named clearly. What stays with me is the question of how. How does a yoga teacher from a small Victorian town convince a respected physician that she is the reincarnation of Jesus Christ? How does she build a network of doctors and lawyers and psychiatrists who helped her steal children and drug them in dark rooms? How does she accumulate $50 million and properties on 3 continents while the children in her care eat leaves to stop them from starving? The answer, I think, is that we consistently underestimate what charisma and institutional access can do when they find each other. Anne Hamilton-Byrne didn't operate in the shadows. She operated inside Melbourne's professional establishment, inside hospitals, academic circles, the comfortable homes of people who thought their education made them immune to manipulation. And it didn't. The children of the family are adults now. They carry what was done to them. Some have found their birth families. Some have found ways to build lives. And others have not. Sarah Hamilton-Byrne, the young woman who walked into that property with police on the morning of the raid, died in 2016 at the age of 46. Before she died, she said she had reconciled with Anne. I don't know what to do with that, and I'm not sure anyone does. If this episode affected you, and I imagine it did, please share it with someone who has never heard of the family. Most people haven't. and that's part of the problem. Subscribe to The Periphery on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. The sources for everything covered today are in the description below, including the documentary and the book that go even deeper into the survivor stories. And leave me a comment with this. What do you think it was about Anne Hamilton-Byrne that made educated, intelligent people believe she was divine? I genuinely want to understand what you think. Next week on The Periphery. For 23 years, the United States government paid psychics to spy on the Soviet Union. They called it Project Stargate. Some of what those psychics described, before it could have been verified by any other means, turned out to be accurate. This is a true story. The documents are on the CIA's own website. Next week, we go inside the government's secret psychic program.